Last Friday night, the Justice Department abruptly fired the U.S. pardon attorney. That's the official who is tasked with helping presidents with their pardon power. And tonight, Liz Oyer says she lost her job because she refused to recommend that Mel Gibson be allowed to buy a gun again. The actor and a backer of the president's lost that gun right after he pled no contest to a domestic violence charge back in 2011. Before Oyer was fired, she had been named to a working group within the Justice Department to determine whether people convicted of certain crimes should have their gun rights and their right to buy one restored. Under federal law, someone who is convicted of a crime like domestic violence, even if it's a misdemeanor state charge, is prohibited from buying or owning a handgun. And Liz Oyer is my source tonight, and it's great to have you here. You believe that you were fired because you did not recommend Mel Gibson have this ability restored. Why do you believe that?
Well, I was not given any reason for my termination, but what I can tell you is that within hours of my decision not to do that, I was escorted out of my office by DOJ security officers.
And so you essentially had been given, from what I read of your comments, there was a list of some 95 people that you had recommended. You got the list back and it had 9 people on the list. Was Mel Gibson on that list? How did this actually play out?
No, the list that I generated was based on the ordinary review that my office does of individuals who are applying for presidential pardons, which includes an extensive background investigation analogous to what you would need to undergo to get a top secret security clearance. So those people, those 95 people, were people who had been extensively vetted, and all of them had in common that they had committed nonviolent crimes. They'd committed them decades and decades ago, and they had demonstrated exemplary character and conduct in the community in the years since, and that was verified by neighbors, friends, and others. And Mel Gibson was not in that mix.
So how did Mel Gibson get brought into this?
So I was asked to write a memo to the Attorney General recommending that these 9 individuals get this relief that she was interested in granting to some deserving Americans. And when the memo came back to me, the comment was, please add Mel Gibson to this recommendation.
Who asked you to add Mel Gibson?
An official in the office of the Deputy Attorney General who is running this project on the day-to-day instructed me that Mel Gibson should be added to the memo.
Do you know the name of that person? Could you share it with us?
It's one of the associate deputy attorney generals. There are several in the office, and I don't want to call anyone out by name, but there is email traffic between me and a number of individuals in the Deputy Attorney General's office about this issue, and the request was made, and I responded that I was unable to fulfill the request because I did not have enough information about Mr. Gibson to be able to recommend that, given his history of domestic violence, he should receive his gun rights back. That's something that is a public safety question. It's very dangerous to mix people with history of domestic abuse and firearms. That substantially increases the likelihood of catastrophic outcomes in domestic violence situations, and that was just not a recommendation that I could make lightly.
So how long between when you sent that response saying you could not, in good faith, recommend Mel Gibson and the time you were fired?
It all unfolded very quickly. I was asked to add him to my recommendation on Thursday evening, and I did not sleep at all Thursday night because I understood that the consequence of not fulfilling this request was likely that I would no longer even be in these conversations. Dissent within the Department of Justice is just being aggressively silenced. People are afraid to speak up. They're afraid to object. I confided in a colleague who expressed the view that yes is really the only acceptable answer to requests that are being made by department leadership. And so I understood that the consequences were potentially serious for my career at the Department of Justice. And when I came into work on Friday morning, I said to a colleague, I really think that Mel Gibson might be my downfall. And within hours of saying that, I was being escorted out of my office.
And you got this letter from Todd, with Todd Blanche's signature on it saying that you were being terminated.
Yeah, I've never met Mr. Blanche, but I received that letter with his signature saying I was being terminated.
So we have a statement that we got from Todd Blanche, who's the Deputy Attorney General, for people who don't know. And in it they said, quote, "This former employee's version of events is false. Her decision to voice this erroneous accusation about her dismissal is in direct violation of her ethical duties as an attorney and is a shameful distraction from our own critical mission to prosecute violent crime, enforce our nation's immigration laws, and make America safe again. What is your response to Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche?
Look, Caitlin, it's terrifying that the number 2 official in the Department of Justice believes that my ethical duty is to keep silent about what is going on inside the Department of Justice. My ethical duty as a DOJ employee is to uphold the laws of this country, to do justice, and to serve the people who I was appointed to serve. It is not to hide the fact that career employees like myself are being punished for expressing dissenting views and for refusing to follow directions.
And so when they're arguing that this is not the reason you were fired, is there any other reason that you believe that would have led to your dismissal?
I was not provided any information about why I was fired, but I'm noting as a factual matter that I was fired within hours of informing the Deputy Attorney General's staff that I could not fulfill this request.
You worked as the pardon attorney. I mean, in this office, obviously, the president can decide this unilaterally without consulting the Justice Department who to pardon. Was your office consulted at all about the January 6th pardons that happened on his first day in office?
The job of my office is not to consult on those political, high-profile cases where presidents have made up their minds that they're going to pardon people. It's to make sure that average citizens are also able to get their cases in front of the president. So I didn't work on the January 6th pardons. I worked on trying to ensure that the president would grant clemency to other deserving people who don't have political connections or access to the White House through the front door.
And I think it's important to be clear, you were appointed in the Biden administration, April 2022. You're a former federal public defender. You've been critical of some of the Bidens, the pardons that President Biden did as well. But on the January 6 ones, the Justice Department is now arguing that the January 6 pardons extend to crimes that happened after January 6th for those individuals. Is that your understanding of how that pardon power works?
I think only the president knows what he meant in the way those documents were written. I will say that if my office had drafted those documents, it would have been very clear what they meant. We take great care to ensure that we write documents in a way that effectuates the intent of the president, and we were not involved in the drafting of those documents.
Can you just tell me, Trump's been in office for 7 weeks now. What have the last 7 weeks been like at the Justice Department compared to what it was like the previous years that you worked there?
The last 7 weeks have felt like 2 years. It's been incredibly stressful. Every single day is fraught with difficult decisions. Every word that is uttered, whether in a meeting or in writing, is something that we are all scrutinizing carefully. We're thinking very carefully about how we choose our words, because we know that if we say the wrong thing, we're not going to be in the next meeting. We're not going to have the opportunity to influence the agenda. And I will say that what has really changed about the department is that instead of consulting the experts about what the right decision is, we're being told, here's the decision that has been made by leadership, and now execute it. And frankly, it feels like the career employees are being used to legitimize some of these decisions that are being made for political reasons.
Wow, that's a remarkable statement. Liz Hoyer, thank you for your time tonight
Thank you,
and for
Caitlin.
joining us to tell your story.
Thank you.